Hi, good morning, Mr. Railton, and thank you so much for your time. And before you pick up the role for the Hong Kong Jockey Club in 2009, you have been working in Queensland and also New South Wales. And could you tell us something about yourself?
Oh, Ian, I grew up in a racing family. My father trained horses. He was ostensibly a small crop farmer, but he always trained horses. And as a young fellow growing up, we always had horses in the back paddock. And he was fortunate enough to have a lot of good horses, so that sparked my interest at a very young age. So from the time I can remember, I've always had a passion for racing and enjoyed following racing and being actively involved. And I started when I was 18 with the Queensland Turf Club. At the age of 18, I started with the Queensland Turf Club, and then I became a stipendiary steward with the Queensland Turf Club when I was 24 years of age. So I've been nearly 40 years as a steward now, so I've been doing it a while.
Actually, there's a lot of positions that if you are coming from a racing family, then you can pick, you can be a trainer, you can be anything, but why would you like to be a steward?
Well, it came by chance really. I started with the Queensland Turf Club, and in those days I used to, when I first started, worked with the handicappers and was timekeeper on race day, worked as an assistant judge, and did quite a few roles. And the chairman of stewards in those days, Andy Tyndall, approached me to be a cadet steward, which I jumped at the opportunity, and I loved that side of it. It's a very interesting side to be involved in the regulatory side of racing, and so when the opportunity came for me to be a stipendiary steward, I grabbed it.
Actually, the duty of a steward can be quite challenging because you will face different scenarios in different time, right?
Yeah, well, I always say to the young stewards now, when you walk onto a racetrack as a steward, you must expect the unexpected, because so many things, you can't script what's going to happen. Every day will be different. You have the same role, but you know, there's always a lot of different scenarios that get thrown up at you, so you've got to adapt and make a sensible decision. But it's been a great career. I've enjoyed being a steward for the time I have. You see a lot of, behind the scenes, you deal with a lot of racing, a lot of wonderful racing people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I would say 2009 is a turning point in your life because you have the opportunity to come to Hong Kong to work for the Hong Kong Jockey Club. And can you tell me what brings you to Hong Kong?
Well, after a long career in Queensland, I spent 6 years in New South Wales working with Ray Murray as his deputy in New South Wales. I loved the racing and the way of life in Sydney, so it was going to be a very enjoyable job to get me away from there. But when I was offered the opportunity to come to Hong Kong, it's an iconic brand, the Hong Kong Jockey Club. I think a lot, like jockeys and trainers, a lot of racing officials, whether you be a steward or a handicapper or a starter or anything like that, if you get an opportunity to come to Hong Kong at some stage in your career, you've got to consider it seriously, and it didn't take me very long to say yes when the opportunity arose.
So we know that just when you pick up the role as the secretary of the licensing committee?
Well, I did have, in Australia, when I was a stipendiary steward, both in New South Wales and Queensland, I also had a function there working with licensing. So I'd been doing that for some time, and the role that I took over from Kim Kelly when I came here, when Mr. Kelly was promoted to Chief Steward, I took over his role, which involved the stewarding role and licensing. So it was a role that I'd been very used to and a role that I'd enjoyed. So I found that another attractive part of the role to come here to be involved in licensing, because clearly it's about trying to enhance racing wherever you can, and by bringing in good people into roles, whether they be jockeys or trainers, it can only continue to enhance the racing product in Hong Kong.
It seems that your team has a very good eyes over the years, because we can say the last 15 or 20 years, Hong Kong has been one of the best racing jurisdictions. It's all because, not only because of the horses, but also about the horsemen. So we have a lot of good jockeys coming over. For example, William Pike, Tommy Berry, and also there's a lot of numbers. So what's the criteria for you guys to pick a jockeys to come to Hong Kong?
Well, the ultimate decision rests with the licensing committee, and the licensing committee are a group out of the Board of Stewards, and they're all very smart people in their own right. So the ultimate decision rests with them, and it's up to management, and I suppose myself more particular. Our task is to identify good candidates, whether they be trainers, if there's a trainer's position, or jockeys. Obviously, there's more opportunities for jockeys here on a constant basis than trainers, but our task is to identify good candidates for the licensing committee to choose from, and the licensing committee have chosen very well in my time here. Of course, not everybody's going to make it, and that's no reflection on their ability as a person or a jockey, but in some instances it works and some it doesn't. But in my time here, the 10 years I've been in Hong Kong, I suppose the world-class superstar jockey like Joe Moreira, he was an instant hit in Hong Kong, and he's just been a wonderful addition to the riding ranks here. But before my time, Zach Purton was riding here, and he was just starting to climb the ladder when I arrived in 2009, and he's a perfect example of a young, improving jockey who has built his career whilst in Hong Kong, and he's just had stepping stones to become champion jockey and recognised as one of the best jockeys in the world. And I suppose the task that the licensing committee have given myself and management in more general terms is to identify those up-and-coming world-class jockeys, and without naming them all, in the first couple of years here we introduced Ty England as a 21-year-old. He did wonderfully well here. Maxime Guillon come here as a young man.
Christophe Sauvignon.
Well, he was before my time, and then in latter years James McDonald came as a 20-year-old, Tommy Berry, Karis Teeton came here at a young age in 2013, and Karis is now established as one of the top 4 or 5 jockeys in Hong Kong. In latter years, you had jockeys like Damien Lane, who came and had a stint here as a 21-year-old, and he's now cleaning up in Australia in all the Group 1 races in recent weeks, and is a world-class jockey. Oisin Murphy, who's just won the UK Championship. So, and you know, even on our jockeys roster now, guys like Chad Schofield and that, who came here at a young age, getting traction in the jockey roster and showing that they're world-class jockeys. So it's a task to try and identify those young up-and-coming jockeys, and it's about utilising connections that we have all overseas to try and pinpoint the good jockeys to put forward to the licensing committee as candidates.
So as we mentioned earlier, so it seems like it's harder for the club to get some quality riders to come to Hong Kong because of the prize money in Australia, and also they would be the retained jockeys for some big stables in the world. So how can we just attract more youngsters to come to ride in Hong Kong?
Well, look, I think that younger demographic, as we explained earlier, the licensing committee have clearly identified that that's a way for us to help develop jockeys here, because a lot of the young jockeys that I've mentioned have come here. They've, like Lyle Hewitson, who's here this season, champion apprentice, 2-time champion South Africa, still 21 years of age, 22 maybe now. They have the world at their feet, and they've got their foot on the first rung of the ladder to become really serious jockeys, and they've achieved a lot in a short time. And the Jockey Club's about attracting those type of riders, and hoping that they'll develop here, be embraced by owners and trainers, and will become really high-class jockeys here and be good for Hong Kong racing.
So very important question for the jockeys who are interested to come to Hong Kong. How they can just apply to come to Hong Kong to be a club jockey?
Oh, they're pretty resourceful. They'll know how to get the message across. But yeah, well, I suppose a lot of jockeys, whether from anywhere around the country, from around the world, they will either contact me by email or directly. There's a big group around the world who can easily give jockeys my contact details, and it's a word of mouth thing. But a lot of jockeys will contact me and express interest, and it might be a young jockey who's not recognised much yet, and that might be a person that we'll keep an eye on and see how they develop, and maybe the opportunity might arise to put them forward to the licensing committee to see if the licensing committee would see fit to give them a licence. So not only do jockeys contact me with expressions of interest, we actively look about. We've got connections around the world, whether it be South Africa, Brazil, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and we're constantly looking for potentially the next club jockey to come here and hopefully do well.
I would like to say you act like a mentor to some younger generations, young riders, because even though they try to show their interest first time, second time or third time, they're without success, but at least you guide them, just like keep doing their job well, and one day if there's a right timing, there's a vacancy, they can come. So you looks like just like you keep contact them, communicate with them as a mentor to give them advices.
Yeah, well, I try to, and it's interesting in recent weeks, you know, jockeys that have really been keen to come to Hong Kong, and young jockeys from different countries I've encouraged them to keep me updated with their achievements, and every time they ride a group winner, I get an email with the video and showing me what they've achieved, and it's good. You develop a bit of a communication and a rapport with some of those riders, and it's very gratifying ultimately if they get the opportunity to come here. So, and another opportunity might be through the International Jockey Series in December. Sometimes we do invite, if a young rider, and not necessarily just a young rider, but if a jockey who has an interest to come to Hong Kong can win a championship in their home country, it might open the door for them to participate in the IJC, and it gives them a taste of Hong Kong, and it gives racing management and the jockey club and the licensing committee an opportunity to see them at first hand. So and then it's about assessing them. It's not just about riding ability, it's about seeing the whole package, what a jockey is, you know, what their character's like, and whether they bring they'd be a good representative and promote Hong Kong as a good racing model.
What kind of advices that you would like to give it to the jockeys that who would like to come to Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong racing is very competitive. Even the big name jockeys, they may not just get winners at a very short period of time. So they should just bear in mind that it's not coming to Hong Kong not equal to successful.
No, success in other jurisdictions doesn't necessarily equate to success in Hong Kong. I suppose my common advice to them is sometimes it's not all about riding ability, it's about the person's character, because Hong Kong will throw up all sorts of challenges, and it's about riding out some of the tough times, showing character, and dusting yourself off when you get disappointed, and putting your hand up and having a smile on your face and going about it, and show people that you want to have an opportunity to stay here. And there's plenty of jockeys currently on the roster who have shown those qualities, have gone through the tough times, and have just through perseverance have kept at it and have been accepted as, you know, for what they are, good jockeys.
Thank you so much for the time, Steve. It has been a very wonderful interview with you.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.